Hello, Team Chesterfield. Thank you for joining us again today as we present our latest update to our Project Restart series. We're looking forward to welcoming our cohort number 1 students back to school on Tuesday, September 29th, and are deep in planning for the eventual return of other cohorts, potentially as soon as October 12th with cohort number 2. My name is Tim Bullis, and I work with the Communications and Community Engagement team here at Chesterfield County Public Schools. We've been busy sharing a lot of information recently about virtual learning, the eventual return to school, and the steps we're taking to keep students actively engaged and safe. Our latest update shared with parents dug a little deeper into our hybrid model, providing families with a look at how we plan to transition from an all virtual learning environment to a hybrid learning environment with students learning in person 2 days a week and joining their in-person colleagues through virtual opportunities while they're working from home on other days. We realize we've shared a lot of information recently. Actually, some would say too much information. Others would say not enough. So we're here today to look at some of the most frequently asked questions that we received. Joining me today to help answer questions are our School Board Chair, Debbie Bailey, and our Superintendent, Dr. Merv Doherty. Welcome, and thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let's talk about some of the updates, enhancements, and clarifications that we have sent out this week in advance of a school board meeting on September 29th. In recent days, we've shared with families and staff members in both English and in Spanish information about virtual, in-person, and hybrid learning opportunities. Virtual opportunities are now included in asynchronous days. All schools will be reverting back to their original operating schedules once cohort number 2 reports. The fact that we're now including 3rd grade students into cohort number 2 when they were originally in cohort number 3. We're actually reversing that with the CTC students, and we're going to delay the return of our career and technical education students until cohort number 3. And then obviously we want to wrap up again with the continued importance of facial coverings for both our staff and students. So Dr. Doherty, we'll start with you. We know that we'll be working in a hybrid model with 2 groups of students coming in, A through K in person on Mondays and Tuesdays, L through Z in person on Thursdays and Fridays. What's changed about this hybrid model over the past couple of days? What enhancements, what clarifications have we made? It sounds like students who are now not in person will have the opportunity to join their classmates, albeit from home, but that important engagement piece on a daily basis.
Thank you, Tim. I think you basically explained it in one sense. The opportunity was when we looked at the hybrid model, and as everybody in the country looks at the hybrid models, what's the positive and negative parts of it? The positive parts of you're coming to school 2 days a week to see your teacher. There are 3 days that you're not in the classroom. What we have all staff dealing with is making sure they make contact, talking with their students, getting them aligned to their assignments, making sure they have answered any questions they have before they go to their asynchronous work. When you think about elementary, that's those every morning meetings, checking up on them during the day through the virtual while the class is in session. I think it brings a bonding between the 2 groups of students that really won't see each other until we get to go 100% back in face-to-face. At the secondary level, it's really important as all of our secondary schools are on their odd-even schedules. So instead of me seeing my teacher only once a week, I will see my teacher twice a week. And that's usually a normal setting for most of our students as they go through their coursework at the secondary level. And I think it's very beneficial for that because the amount of time that they will have in engagement is similar to the time that they have with all virtual learning in over 12 to 13 hours of time with their teacher.
Ms. Bailey, why was this important to the school board and specifically draw on some of your experiences as a school teacher?
Students coming to school 2 days a week and getting that face-to-face instruction is critically important for them for the engagement piece. But the thought of them going home for 3 days of asynchronous learning completely on their own was very concerning to us. We heard a lot of feedback and input from parents that they were concerned about those 3 days of asynchronous learning. So we thought about, our teachers have done an amazing job with the virtual world, and so providing those touch points during the day for our elementary students would provide some consistency and stability and connection with their teacher in their class. And then in the secondary world, the teachers are going to have the discretion and use their professional judgment as to whether they want to maintain the Google meeting throughout the class period with the students that are remotely learning from home, or whether they want to do the check-in, explain the assignment, communicate with the kids at home what the assignment is on Canvas, and then they can decide if their lesson indicates that these students should be released to then go home and, at home complete that assignment in Canvas, or if they want to maintain them in the room. That's going to be depending on the nature of the lesson, the teacher's comfort zone of whether she wants to work with the face-to-face kids and the virtual. I think it lends itself to that more in the secondary level than it does the elementary. But either way, the teachers are going to have the autonomy to make that decision and do what's best for their students. And I know that our teachers are always have that at the forefront of their mind. They're going to do what's best for their students. And I think having those touch points it's just critical to keep the kids engaged in those 3 asynchronous days.
Thank you. I'm going to jump back to something you said at the beginning, touching on the virtual learning environment. It is not what our students experienced during the spring, and the feedback, save for a couple of login issues during the first couple of hours on the first day, has been overwhelmingly positive. What have you all heard about the virtual learning experience so far?
I think that change is probably the hardest thing for people to deal with, but when they were very upset at first about us going to 100% virtual. Now that they are in that world and they're experiencing it and they're realizing, oh, this is not that bad. In fact, it works really well for some students. Unfortunately, it doesn't work really well for others. And so providing the hybrid model will allow those children who are not experiencing a great success with virtual to come into the classroom and get that face-to-face contact with their teachers. But those that it is working really well for will have the opportunity to stay in a 100% virtual model. The fact that the teachers have just killed it. And in July, I said, I know teachers are going to go home in August and plan, and they are going to just kill it, and they're going to be rock stars with virtual, and that's exactly what they've done. And I think it's very strategic that we've done it this way, because now they have that in their toolkit. They are ready to do virtual, and as we move into hybrid and then hopefully into 100% return, if we end up, God forbid, having to quarantine a teacher or a class or having to revert back to some virtual, we have that ready. We know what we're doing now. And I think it was strategic to start virtual, get them prepared and ready for this. And as we phase into face-to-face, they're ready if we have to pivot back.
Dr. Doherty, you mentioned earlier that there are the times that are allotted for in-person versus virtual. We have heard from several parents who question whether or not their child will get as much learning done in person as they would in the virtual learning environment right now. How does that match up?
When you think of, let's take a Monday, Tuesday day for students with the first part of the alphabet, A to K. They will have a full day of school. So they will have, we're trying to make this as normal as possible. And so you're looking at a 6.5-hour day to 7-hour day in some cases as we go through the elementary phases into the secondary phase. When you think about the screen time that we have for in the asynchronous time or in the virtual time, you're limited to only several hours a day. Now, there are the positive negatives of both points. One, I'm seeing my teachers every day for a period of time. The other one, I'm doing face-to-face. But we've tried to counterbalance that with check-in times and morning meeting times and other areas throughout the week. So in the matter of time frame of face-to-face time or in-person time with a teacher, your hybrid model will most likely give you more time with your teacher than if you stayed virtual completely. And we know that there are two groups. There's a group that love virtual, and there's a group that wants to come back. And we're not here to try to change the mind of anybody. We're saying, here's a hybrid model. This is what we can do under the health guidelines, and here's how we're going to follow the health guidelines. And as we move forward and those guidelines change, we'll be more than happy to continue to push the envelope, because this is going to help us with getting all of our kids back at some time.
Ms. Bailey, as a former middle school teacher, you saw your students 50% of the time just 2 days a week. Under the hybrid model, you would see them 1 day a week. Explain the change and the adaptations that our teachers will make to make sure that those students remain engaged.
Well, one thing that resonates with me that would have been amazing when I was a teacher is to have half my class in front of me. My last year teaching, which was just last year, I had 34 students in my fourth block class. To think that that could be reduced to half of that, you're going to get a lot more done. So just being able to engage a smaller number, and I have talked to teachers that are kind of excited about that aspect of having a smaller course, students in their class. But in the odd even schedule, I saw, let's say, the odd day on Tuesdays and Thursdays regular when we went 5 days a week. So it's not that much different, and that we are going to, with this hybrid model, see them one day face to face, but in smaller numbers, which will benefit the amount of work you can get done in an 80-minute class period. And then we'll be checking in with the ones at home. So we'll have, I would imagine, and then also it's not best practices to stand and deliver and talk for 80 straight minutes. There's a lot of group work, seat work types of things that go on in a classroom, even in a face-to-face day. So to be able to have those students at home and say, hey, your assignment is on Canvas, you need to read this and do this activity to prepare for when you come in face-to-face, so we can do this activity that connects to that. So I think the work can continue at a pace which is acceptable.
Ms. Bailey, let's stay with you real quick. We've had some parents inquire about the school calendar, and obviously there are some limitations about what we can change with Election Day and Thanksgiving. But there is a half day on October 16th, and the board will entertain a proposal at its meeting on the 29th to eliminate that half day. Why is that under consideration?
Well, we asked for them to look at the half day and basically get rid of it because it's not necessary in this world that we're in right now. Our teachers are going to have a full asynchronous day on Wednesdays, and on those days in a hybrid model, they will have opportunity to plan on Wednesdays, have their advisory period in a secondary class, do a morning meeting in an elementary class, but then contact individual students, do anything that we normally would have done in a half-day planning and professional development. They'll have the opportunity for that every single Wednesday.
Dr. Doherty, I assume it would be a little disruptive on the first week of school for cohort number 2 to have the second group out for a half day while they should be in getting to know their teachers even better. Yeah,
we agree that there have been changes that we've had to make with the calendar, and this is more of a practical, common sense issue, whereas we are providing time every week now for teachers on that Wednesday to have time with contacting parents, grading, doing professional development, having meetings, just like we would do on any half day. And so I think it benefits us to have the 16th back. So let's get to another change that we'll be proposing to the school board on the 29th. That moves third grade into cohort 2. Third, fourth, and fifth were originally cohort number 3. Why are we entertaining the idea of moving third grade back into cohort number 2? Well, we were asked to look at the guidelines that were given to us in the health guidelines and also in the Department of Education guidelines on bringing different cohorts back. And in the guidelines it says pre-K to 3, and so we wanted to follow the guidelines as close as possible. We were originally looking at it as a volume issue, but we realized let's stay with all the guidelines because they also follow the health guidelines. So as the health guidelines say, when you get to a certain stage, bring back your special needs students, bring back your pre-K to 3 students, bring back other groups of students. So this was a good opportunity for us to adjust and follow the guidelines because we have no idea what the future holds. We are hoping as the pandemic starts to calm down and we can follow all the general health practices that we'll be able to bring more students back. But this was a great opportunity also with the career and technical students, moving them to our cohort 3 was also in the guidelines, and that was actually brought to our attention by the director, Chad Macklin, saying I think we should also move this area as well. That's a 2-week movement. So it's not either way, it's only a 2-week movement for both groups. And it's a minor change that will benefit the students. Ms. Bailey, I know that this is yet another change that we're making for families. We've heard you and the school board talk often about grace, patience, and understanding. For families who may be frustrated by the amount of change over the past 6 months, what would you say?
Well, It's a very fluid situation, and we're all learning as we go. I know parents are tired of giving grace, and they're angry and they're frustrated, as we all are. This is a very difficult situation. I will say, though, that we voted on Project Restart on August 11th, and we really haven't deviated from that. That plan is in place. We're following that plan. I think it's a good plan. We have tweaked it. We've made some modifications, but we've done so to try to be concerned with things that, as they've come up, this would be better. So would you not want us to try to improve? And we're trying to be responsive also to parental input. Parents often say that we don't listen, but then they say you're constantly changing. And that's because we're listening. We're listening to you say, we want more contact with our students on the 3 days in a hybrid and not just 100% asynchronous. So we made some modifications to that. And the fact that we do need to be responsive to the VDOE and VDH guidelines to keep our cohorts aligned with their metrics will make things smoother as we proceed through this pandemic. And I think that adjusting to those concerns is prudent. It's what we should do. And yes, it does seem at times that we are making some changes, but not wholesale changes. When we adopted Project Restart, we established the public health panel. We are sticking with them, sticking with their recommendations. We have not made any changes along those lines. And we're sticking with our plan to roll out and return to learn with modifications as needed.
Dr. Doherty, let's go back to the elementary level real quick. How will pacing work? There's some families who have expressed concern that if they're in a virtual learning environment as opposed to an in-person learning environment, they'll be learning at different speeds. Some students may learn more. I assume, just as they would during a normal year, that the teachers in both sides will continue to plan together as a team and that we have some pacing guides for them?
They do, and I think that's a really good question from parents with great concerns because of the two sides that we have. And our teachers meet regularly, and they talk about the strengths they have, where they are, just like they would meet during the regular school year. They have their professional learning times, they have their grade level meetings, and they are just monitoring this. And the nice thing about meeting and talking with their students every day in the hybrid model is that they can continue to see where the patient is and the strength, because this allows us also to do some differentiation in teaching to help some of our students get caught up in where we think the deficiencies are. But the opportunity to think that people are going to be head one way or another is that they're going to be discussing in their meetings on where they are in their pacing and how they have to move forward. And I think it does have an opportunity to continue to move the pacing guides forward and create new learning each week.
So when everybody comes back to that 100% in person, we should all be on the same page.
That would be the plan.
Okay. Ms. Bailey, let's switch and tackle some of the questions that have come in about health and safety, and let's specifically address what happens when a student displays symptoms of COVID at school.
Well, there's going to be a quarantine room that they're going to instantly be moved to. A nurse will be there. They will be making phone call home, and the parents will, come and get the child. But they'll be instantly quarantined from the rest of the students and the faculty. I will like to take a second to say it's going to be critically important as we come back to school that parents do the system check in the morning to see if their children are displaying any symptoms of being ill, and that they keep their children home when they're ill. Because in order for us to stay open, and we want to stay open once we return and not have exposure, parents are going to have to be very diligent in making sure that they do not send their children to school sick. And if they do happen to come to school and display symptoms, we have protocol in place that will instantly remove them and put them in a quarantine room.
And our families who are watching this, depending on when they're watching this, will either get that checklist this weekend or will have already received it, along with some mask recommendations and guidance, because we want to make sure that our students are coming to school prepared to learn, but in a healthy way. Dr. Doherty, what happens if a student or a staff member tests positive for COVID? And I'll give you a little bit of a break. We're going to cover your face at this point with those actual steps as well. But if you can just kind of generally talk us through what happens in that case.
Well, once we are alerted that we have a case, we follow the county health guidelines. We have been in contact with the health department, also with the guidelines that the CDC and Virginia Department of Health have given us. And so we have to realize that, one, we have to act immediately. As Ms. Bailey said, we have a quarantine room. Once we notice that it is a positive, we have to do some tracing to make sure we're in contact others who have been in contact with this person. But then realizing that once that happens, and the student or it may be even a staff member or at home, they have timelines. They have the 10-day window of timeline. Our employees have to get clearance to come back from the employee health center, and we have to have information from the family that they have been cleared to come back from a licensed practitioner. And so when we see the opportunities of this occurring, and say opportunities because we will act in a manner that will keep everyone else safe. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when it is going to happen. When it happens, then I think we are well prepared to handle this. And each case is its own opportunity to make sure we provide health and safety for all of our students.
I think what you just said is critically important for us to acknowledge for all families. It's not if, but when. As we've seen with school divisions that have already opened, they have experienced positive cases already. It would be unrealistic for us to think that we're not going to have a positive case among students or staff. So reassure our parents what we're going to do to make sure that the environment is as safe as possible.
And Tim, if I may just add to that, as some may say, well, I haven't heard of other school districts having this. And it's not, by the guidelines that we have from the health department, it is not supposed to be published. It is supposed to be the people who were in that vicinity are to be notified. And so we have to realize that we're not giving names out, we're not giving information out. We are providing the guidelines that the health department gives us to make sure that we protect also the people who are involved with this.
Ms. Bailey, in the current environment that we're in, we're seeking to be as transparent as possible with staff in our buildings. We've been notifying staff if there's been a positive case within the building. When our students return in cohort number 2, we'll begin alerting families if there's a positive case within their school building. And starting next week, we'll be posting all of the positive cases on our website to be completely transparent. Why is that transparency needed?
Well, as a parent sending my child to school, I would want to know. I would want to be making an informed decision before I put them on a bus and send them to school. If there was a positive case in my child's classroom or in the building, because this is their children's health that they're making decisions on. I think parents are getting ready to be faced with a very important decision, and that is whether to stay 100% virtual or to send their children back. And that is a family choice and a family decision. I think we're blessed to be able to offer them that choice, and they can stay virtual if they do not feel it safe for their child to return. They will have that option. We have CCPS online for our secondary students. We have even if they don't want to do CCPS online, they can stay virtual at home in the hybrid model and just do the check-ins with their teachers each day, following their schedule. And then the elementary have an option to go 100% virtual with a teacher all day. So I think that's important for families to know about outbreaks because they need to make an informed decision. I guess at some point in time when we have to either quarantine a classroom, parents will be choosing maybe to pull back out their individual child even if the entire school doesn't close down.
Let's continue on that health and safety topic, and we've made significant progress in terms of our work to put a nurse in every school. We've significantly decreased the number of vacancies we have. We're down to about 5. Why is that important?
We need a nurse in every school normally. Pre-pandemic would have been ideal, but definitely during a pandemic, a nurse in every school is critically important for the safety of the staff and for the students. I think it's amazing how quickly we've been able, our funding came through in late August. We couldn't even advertise and start interviewing and hiring until the funding was in place. Once that got in place, we've hired 15 nurses in a matter of a few weeks. We have 5 more spots to go in order to be fully staffed. And the expectation is that we will have a nurse in every building as the students come back. Because as you know, with the phase-in hybrid, which I consider to be a very safe, slow, responsible return to school, it's very measured, that by having the nurses in the buildings when the buildings where the students are coming back, by the time that our last group comes back, we hope to have those final 5 in place so that there will definitely be a nurse in every building when the children are back in the schools.
Thank you. Dr. Doherty, we've heard from some families who probably didn't think the public health metrics were going to respond as favorably as they did, as quickly as they did. And so they're quickly pulling together everything to make an informed decision that Ms. Bailey talked about earlier. Several have asked about school buses and how we will monitor overcrowding on school buses and what changes we will make when we see that. What's the plan there?
First of all, we would appreciate any parent that could drive their child to school, drive their child to school. We have guidelines, and the guidelines say 1 child per seat. That means most of our buses, the max will be 26 students. I think our transportation department is working extremely hard as they look at the routes through Versatran to make sure that they pick up the students that are assigned on the days. We will not leave a student at the bus stop, even if we are at 26. And I will say this, as we know, the first week or 2 of school, adjusting routes is always a challenge. And we will make those adjustments with that opportunity. There may be double backs. When you're thinking about busing 49,000 students with less than half a capacity now, that's going to happen. But we've looked at the numbers. The drivers are well informed. Everyone's going to have a mask coming on the bus. The drivers will have a mask. And we will provide them if we have to. And there will be cleaning done on the buses. So we will try to take every precaution that we can as a school system to make sure that we provide safe environments on the buses. We know that families, if they have 2 children, they can sit together, but we're going to do the best we can to make sure that we follow the guidelines. There will be times that the buses are going to have more than 26, and they'll have to make those adjustments.
Thank you. As we head into the last question, let's just do a real quick recap of everything that we've learned over the past week that we want families to know. Virtual learning opportunities will be included in the asynchronous environment, so our students will have a chance to connect when they're from home. All schools will go back to their original normal operating schedule that's posted on mychesterfieldschools.com. 3rd grade students are now in cohort number 2, so they'll be returning earlier than previously thought. Our career and technical education students, including the auto mechanics class at Midlothian High School, will actually come back later than we had originally proposed, and that's in alignment with some state guidance as well. And then the last topic, which is informative and a request for families as well. Ms. Bailey, you hit on it a little bit earlier with the health guidelines and the self-assessment check. Face masks in school. They've got to have face masks on, some sort of cloth covering. Why is that so important as we return students back to school for staff and students?
There was a recent study that just came out from Brown University that talked about how the exposures in school is actually lower than they had anticipated with just a couple of weeks to do the study. But the number one indicator is that wearing face masks is the best protection for spreading the virus. So wearing a face mask is critical. It's critical to keep our staff safe and all our students safe and to keep our schools open. So we will have the mandatory requirement that students wear a face mask. For those that are not comfortable with that, they have the option of staying virtual and still getting their education.
Thank you. And just to clarify for the viewing audience at home, we are all 6 feet apart right here. We
Yes,
had
we
the
are.
face masks on before we came on, and we will put them on as soon as the camera turns off. It is that important to us. Dr. Doherty, anything that you'd like to add in conclusion?
Yes, Tim. I think for our parents and viewers, the understanding that we are following guidelines from the County Risk Management, which we have a lot of respect for, the County Health Department, and from the Department of Health of Virginia. And that these guidelines are very strict in some areas of how many students can be in the classroom. And I know that people say, well, you know, there are school districts in areas that are opening up. Some of the school districts that have opened up are quite small. There are a couple that are large that are going to try it. But in Chesterfield, we're going to follow the guidelines that we're given for safe health. And as those guidelines change and let us to move forward, we will do that in a swift and an appropriate manner.
Ms. Bailey, anything final?
I'm just looking forward to the day we can all be back 100% in the classrooms 5 days a week, and I'm encouraged by the data. I think it's going well. Tell the public to keep wearing those face masks and keep the virus tamped down, and we will be back as soon as possible. As soon as our health panel says, come back.
And we will be back with you as we have additional updates. We will be coming back to you shortly before we bring back cohort number 2. Hopefully that's on October the 12th. But for now, thank you for watching another segment of Engage Chesterfield as we dig deeper into Project Restart. Have a great day.